wind, waves, and miracles. At first, people saw Jesus' authority mainly in his healings and acts of compassion. But before long, that same authority began to appear in ways that surprised and even troubled those who knew him best. His works had already transformed villages, relieving suffering with a certainty that defied expectation. Next, it was not only people who responded to Jesus. The forces of nature also obeyed him, in ways that astonished everyone. As evening approached on one occasion, Jesus departed by boat with his disciples. The day's crowds had dispersed, their voices fading into the stillness of gathering twilight. The lake, calm and untroubled, reflected the soft dimming of the sky. Nothing within the quiet scene suggested disturbance as they set out to cross the Sea of Galilee. The familiar waters carried them forward as they had done countless times before. But tranquility proved deceptive. Without warning, winds descended across the surface of the lake. The air, once gentle, hardened into violent motion. Waves rose with gathering force, striking the vessel in relentless succession. The sea transformed from passive expanse into a hostile and ungovernable power. Darkness deepened as the storm intensified. Experienced fishermen strained against the elements, their knowledge of such waters offering little advantage. Every effort failed. Order turned to confusion. The boat was thrown about by the raging storm. And exhausted, Jesus slept in the bottom of the boat. While the vessel groaned beneath the assault of wind and wave, he lay undisturbed, his stillness itself a source of bewilderment to the disciples. Danger was immediate and unmistakable. Every rising swell threatened to overturn the boat and drown them all. Fear overcame composure and they roused him with urgent voices, shaped by dread rather than reverence. "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Jesus rose calmly. There was no sign of fear or urgency. He stood in the midst of the storm, completely untroubled. No anxiety showed on his face, and no trembling touched his voice. He spoke with quiet, unquestioned authority. He spoke into the storm, 3 simple and yet powerful words. Quiet. Be still. No ceremony, no struggle, just a command. And instantly the wind stopped, and the waves settled. Where terror had ruled only moments earlier, the sea became as calm as when they had left the shore. Silence had replaced chaos. The disciples stared upon the transformed waters with astonishment even deeper than relief. Never had they seen anything like this, just 3 words and even the wind and sea obeyed him. Jesus, seeing their astonishment, turned to them and said, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" When the vessel touched the shore, the disciples stepped out in silence, their minds still unsettled by what they had witnessed upon the waters. The violence of the storm had ceased at his word, yet its memory lingered. The land before them felt harsh and empty. Jagged rock and uneven earth edged the water, with only scattered growth and distant hints of habitation. This was not a place of movement or noise, but of solitude. No crowds awaited them as before, but something unseen had observed their arrival. Then a figure appeared among the rugged tombs and slopes. A man approached rapidly, his behavior immediately unsettling. His movements lacked calmness or order, and it was evident that he was not in his right mind. Many who knew of him believed the man was possessed by demons, for the workings of the troubled mind were little understood, and such suffering was often explained by spirits or demons. He could be so violent that he had even been chained up in the rocks and tombs where he roamed. But he could be so strong that he always broke free. Separation had become his existence and the rocks and tombs his home. He ran to meet Jesus, and when he reached him, he fell to his knees, shouting as loud as he could. "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me." Jesus looked at him and asked, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." With modern medical understanding, this might be seen as a severe mental disturbance, but those who witnessed it understood it very differently. As dawn broke, a large herd of pigs could be seen feeding along the hillside. These animals were kept by Gentiles, since pigs were considered unclean by the Jews and were neither raised nor eaten by them. The man begged to be freed from his torment, and according to the beliefs of the day, such suffering was thought capable of entering other living creatures. Jesus granted his request, and instantly the pigs were seized by a violent frenzy and rushed down the steep bank and plunged into the water below. Those who witnessed it were overcome with astonishment. But the man who had knelt in torment now stood in stillness and clarity. The change was unmistakable. The confusion was gone, replaced by calmness and a clear, settled mind. Those who were with Jesus looked on in quiet amazement. Just hours earlier, they had seen the forces of nature yield to his word. Now they had witnessed the freeing of a troubled mind. Those tending the pigs fled in fear, and news of the event spread rapidly. Before long, a crowd arrived to see what had happened. When they got there, they saw the man once feared and avoided now seated in peace. His troubled past erased. But instead of joy, fear took hold. The loss of the animals troubled them greatly, and Jesus' power made them uneasy. So whether it was fear or anger, they asked him to leave. The man, now freed and clear-minded, pleaded to follow him. But Jesus told him to stay and speak to his own people. So he went through the nearby towns, telling everyone what had been done for him, and those who heard were amazed. After crossing back over the lake, news of his arrival spread quickly. Soon, a crowd gathered, many already waiting in expectation. The works he had done throughout Galilee had left a deep impression. And thousands began to arrive to see what he would do next. Jairus, a ruler of the synagogue, came forward from the crowd. All sense of status had vanished. He was a man burdened by worry and grief. Falling before Jesus, he pleaded with desperate urgency, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." In desperation, he pleaded that Jesus would come at once, hoping it was not yet too late. And Jesus, full of compassion, went with him. As they made their way toward his house, people gathered around him from every side, driven by hope and urgent need, until movement became almost impossible. Among them was a woman who had endured years of suffering. And this was her last hope. Years of suffering and failed remedies had left her with nothing but fading hope. Yet the reports of Jesus awakened one final resolve in her as she thought to herself, "If I just touch his clothes, I will be healed." So, hidden within the crowd, she reached forward and touched his garment. And immediately, she was healed. The woman, startled by the sudden change in her body, remained hidden in the crowd for a moment. But Jesus paused, sensing that power had gone out from him. He turned and said, "Who touched my clothes?" His disciples replied, "You see the people crowding against you, and yet you can ask, 'Who touched me?'" Then the woman, shaking and afraid, stepped out from the crowd. With a trembling voice, she revealed the truth before them all, speaking of the hope that had compelled her. And seeing her faith, Jesus looked at her and said, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." Before he had finished speaking, messengers arrived with devastating news. "The child is dead, so no need to bother the teacher anymore." From a human perspective, nothing more could be done, but Jesus turned to him and said, "Don't be afraid, just believe." As Jesus arrived, The sounds of mourning met him at the house, for everyone believed the child was dead. Calmly, he began to speak. Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead but asleep. But his words were met with disbelief and laughter. He took with him only the parents and his closest followers and went to where the child lay dead. Everything was quiet. Her parents sat by the bedside, fear and hope mingling. Jesus went and stood beside the bed and lifting the girl's hand. He said to her with calm authority, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." In that very moment, the girl was restored to life, stood up and began to walk around. News of these events spread quickly, and large crowds followed him into a remote place, far from the towns and villages. The people stayed with him through the day, listening and not wanting to leave. Few had thought about how much time had passed or how far they were from places where food could be found. The area was isolated, and there was no easy way to obtain provisions. Still, the people remained eager to hear him and see if he would perform any more miracles. As the light began to fade, the problem became clear, so the disciples came to Jesus with concern. It was getting late, and they had no food to feed the people, so he needed to send them to find food in the nearby villages. But Jesus answered in a way they did not expect. "They don't need to go away. You can give them something to eat." To the disciples, the suggestion that they should get enough food to feed everyone seemed impossible, so they said to him, "That would take more than half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat?" Then Jesus asked them, "How many loaves do you have?" And they replied, "We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish." So Jesus instructed the disciples to have the people sit down on the grass in groups of hundreds and fifties, and what had been a vast crowd now rested in quiet expectation. He asked that the bread and fish be brought to him. Then, lifting his eyes heavenward, he gave thanks. Then he broke the bread and gave it to the disciples, along with the fish, and they distributed it to the people. The small provision became more than enough. Everyone ate, and all were satisfied. And when the meal was finished, the disciples gathered what remained, filling 12 baskets with fragments. Those who had eaten were about 5,000 men, in addition to women and children. Those who witnessed it could not dismiss what had taken place. What seemed impossible had become reality. Hunger had been met where no provision appeared sufficient. The memory of that day remained, both with the disciples and the crowd. But the full meaning of what had occurred would only become clear in time. Eventually, the crowd dispersed, and Jesus directed his disciples to depart by boat and go ahead of him across the lake. He himself remained behind, withdrawing from the others and ascending the higher ground. Needing to be alone. Far from the noise and pressing needs of the day, Jesus spent the night on the mountain in prayer to his Father. The disciples did as Jesus had instructed them and got into a boat to go to the other side of the lake. But what began as a normal crossing soon became difficult. The wind grew stronger, pushing against the boat. And the disciples struggled to make progress. The lake, usually crossed without trouble, now worked against them. All night, they battled the wind and the waves, but after hours of struggle, they were no more than halfway across. Then, in the darkness, they saw a figure approaching across the surface of the lake, and they were terrified. But as he got closer, they realized that it was Jesus, miraculously walking upon the water. And as he got close to the boat, he said, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." Peter, with his familiar urgency, said, "Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water." And when Jesus told him to come, he stepped out of the boat. For a moment he moved forward, but as he felt the wind and saw the waves, fear overcame him. He began to sink and cried out, "Lord, save me." And immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him, as he said, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" And together they entered the boat. The wind and waves ceased, and miraculously the boat was on the shore. As they stepped onto the shore, the disciples' minds lingered on the events of those extraordinary days: the crowds fed, the sick restored, the storm subdued, and the impossible made real upon the sea. None of it could be easily dismissed. Each moment added weight to what they were beginning to understand. In later days, they would reflect upon such things. Were these merely extraordinary events, or did they reveal something greater about the one who walked among them? For the works of Jesus stirred not only astonishment, but contemplation. Jesus, wind, waves, and miracles in the golden thread. Divine authority revealed through experience. What the disciples witnessed could not easily be dismissed, for the events carried a pattern that could not be explained by chance. Fear became a pathway to understanding. Times of confusion and alarm were transformed into moments of revelation, where deeper realities were shown and experienced rather than simply described. Meaning often follows observation. The significance of Christ's works was not always grasped immediately, but unfolded through reflection over time. God's purpose is not random. What appeared extraordinary and random was not accidental, but part of a deliberate greater pathway to a deeper understanding of God's plan and purpose. Faith grows before full comprehension. Trust often begins where certainty has not yet fully formed, and grows as understanding deepens. If you found this video interesting and would like to explore more, we have several options for you. One is our free, multilingual, Bible-based Christianity course, a free 30-lesson video course covering all aspects of the Bible and daily life. Another is the Bible by Stories, a series of over 50 videos that takes you on a journey from creation to the early church. And if you have questions about Scripture, there is a multilingual chat system on the website where you can ask any question on scriptural issues. To access any of them, simply visit the website listed below. If we don't yet have videos or the course in your language, please email us at the address shown, telling us what you are interested in and your language, and we will do our best to create them for you. God bless you on your walk to His kingdom.